Welcome to Secret Spaces, everybody. Thanks for coming. Secret Spaces is a weekly Twitter space featuring secret network contributors and news from around the ecosystem. And today, our guest is someone that I'm sure you're all familiar with, the Shade Protocol team. Shade Protocol has been building on Secret for a long time now, and we've had them on Secret Spaces several times. But we have some new updates to share today, some pretty exciting stuff. I know something that a lot of people have been looking forward to for a long time, and some of you might already have an idea of what that is, but we'll get to that in just a little bit. Let's go ahead and just do a basic introduction to Shade Protocol, just in case anybody might not be super familiar with it. What is Shade Protocol?
Absolutely. Just want to start this off by saying thank you, Patrick, for allowing us to come on here and speak again. It's always wonderful to speak to you and the rest of the Secret Network community when we get the chance. Just a quick intro to myself. My name's Red Eyed Bear behind the Shade Protocol account. I'm part of the Shade Protocol team, primarily focusing on marketing. I've worked in the Secret Network for about a year before I started formally contributing to Shade Protocol, but I've been in this space since early 2021 and immediately fell down the rabbit hole when I discovered Secret Network, and that kind of was cemented when I discovered Shade later on that year. So to give a brief introduction of what is Shade Protocol, for anyone who isn't aware, Shade Protocol is an interconnected ecosystem of self-referential, privacy-preserving DeFi applications built on Secret Network that all share value accrual, governance, and interconnected functionality under a single overarching token, which is the Shade token. To give a little bit of background on, why we decided to build in the Secret Network, to date, most currencies in blockchain are entirely transparent, which creates significant barriers to adoption for many groups, including institutions, enterprise solutions that would want to participate in DeFi. And so, building on Secret Network allows us to utilize privacy-preserving smart contracts that use encrypted inputs and outputs. And even though everything is encrypted and private, we still have this auditable privacy. And that auditability of Silk, Shade, and any of the DeFi interactions people have within Shade Protocol's ecosystem, that auditability is incredibly important for both institutional and retail bases. It allows people to stay compliant with their local regulations, provide proof of funds and activity as needed without sacrificing their data privacy. And to be clear for anyone listening, I mean a pretty particular thing when I say data privacy. I really mean the full right of control over the why, when, where, and how your digital assets, which includes the data associated with it, are all accessed. Whether it be for social, political, economic reasons, people value privacy and security associated with their financial data, and Secret Network is empowering that reality for applications like Shade Protocol. And so, in the future, and we'll kind of go into what Silk is and some of the other applications are, but, in the future where we're able to use Silk in in commerce and in our real life to preserve purchasing power, we'll be able to do that all privately, make your purchases privately, payments, donations, store, generate wealth. All of that will be able to be done in privacy. And so ultimately, this combination of privacy and sovereignty associated with Silk and the other applications within the Shade Protocol ecosystem increases the value proposition that we're able to really give to users. And it's in our mind, and we're seeing this validated through the market, is going to empower this next wave of digital asset adoption across both new and existing communities. So now that I've given a little bit of background on kind of what kind of birthed Shade, the idea why we were so focused on building on Secret Network, can talk about the different products that are already within the Shade ecosystem, right? And I'll kind of go through these in a timeline just so you can kind of visualize the progress that has been made with Shade Protocol since its inception. Most people, I guess, found out about Shade Protocol when we announced our airdrop back in 2022 in February. And if I'm wrong, I'm sure someone in the team or in the audience is going to correct me. But this was the first cross-chain airdrop that was successfully executed in the Cosmos. We then launched the liquid staking derivative for Secret, which is the native governance and gas token for the Secret network. And I'll go into a little bit more details about that in a minute. We saw the launch of bonds later in 22. Actually, I think I would be remiss if I didn't say there was a massive, one. It's not a launch, but it was a massive shift in kind of the game plan. Was Terra collapsed in May of 22. We saw a massive shift in Silk's model. We launched the Shade IBC bridge, which is a generalized IBC bridge that anyone in the cosmos, very similar to satellite money, anybody on any chain can move assets from one chain to another. And the benefit of having this within the Shade protocol application set is that users are just one click away from any private DeFi application that they might want to use their assets in. We launched a massive incentivized testnet. It was 3 parts going over an incentivized testnet for ShadeSwap, Silk, and Shade Lend, which were later launched in April of 2023. We had the SNP25 migration that happened in April, which most people kind of forget about that already. But we saw a Shade launch in April. We saw a Shade Lend and Silk launch in April. Secret Surge started in April. We announced all of our strategic partnerships with major liquid staking derivatives provided in the Cosmos, all the major decentralized stablecoin protocols in the Cosmos. We've saw some really great hack secret participation, and a few other things that we can get into later. But I feel like I've gone a little bit too broad or scope for your question, Patrick. Feel free to rein me in as needed.
No, that was an excellent introduction. Let's talk about, I guess, so we have a couple of big announcements to share, but there's also been a lot going on just over the past few months with Shade Protocol. So maybe just take us through like the timeline since the launch of Shade Swap in April and just what's happened since then, the Secret Surge participation from Shade Protocol, and maybe from there lead into what's coming next, which is just around the corner.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be more than happy to do that. Just to give some background on what ShadeSwap is, for anyone who isn't aware of the opportunities that are currently present, ShadeSwap is a hybrid DEX that functions as both a stable swap, a derivative swap, and a constant product market maker. The initial idea for ShadeSwap was to provide this critical component for the ecosystem, which was being able to provide significant liquidity and utility for Silk, and the assets that were accepted as collateral for minting Silk. But there was something, we had this kind of, light bulb moment where we realized there was a powerful application of this new curve that we developed that we use for our derivative swap. And the derivative swap uses something called asymmetric concentrated liquidity. And just for a real high level TLDR, this effectively allows us to concentrate liquidity in the most ideal trading ranges for staking derivatives. And the key point about the ability to asymmetrically do this is that liquid staking derivatives almost never trade above their redemption rate. So we would be wasting liquidity by trying to concentrate liquidity above that redemption point for any liquid staking derivative. And so what we're able to do is we're able to asymmetrically concentrate that liquidity slightly below that redemption rate, which is where most staking derivatives naturally trade, and able to provide incredible depth of liquidity for anyone looking to trade between liquid staking derivatives and their underlying layer 1 assets. So that's just to give a little bit of context for why the launch of ShadeSwap is so important. We're effectively creating the most ideal trading experience for anyone looking to trade liquid staking derivatives. And this is not limited to Cosmos-based liquid staking derivatives, and we can kind of get into some teasers later on. But so with the launch of ShadeSwap, we are effectively now allowing users to have this ultra efficient trading environment that is also completely front-running resistant thanks to the use of secret smart contracts. ShadeSwap features stablecoins as the primary pairing asset, and that stablecoin is Silk. So this is really important for a few different reasons. One, this helps reduce the impermanent loss that users are facing whenever they're pairing volatile assets to another asset when they're trying to liquidity provide. And so by being able to provide liquidity for your favorite assets, whether it be ETH or Atom or Shade or whatever, when you pair it to Silk, if during a downturn, kind of like we're seeing right now, the value of these assets go down, if that other asset you're paired with is Silk, you just end up getting less Silk in your LP position, but way more of this other volatile asset that you want to acquire, right? And so this is a more beneficial liquidity provider experience for anyone looking to put their assets to work or put their assets to use in DeFi. And then also Shade Swap for liquidity providers. I'm obviously biased, but I truly do think that Shade Swap provides one of the most beneficial and ideal liquidity provider experiences in the Cosmos ecosystem. And one of those, along with all the things I just listed, having the ability to instantly unbond your liquidity, having that flexibility is incredibly important for liquidity providers. And it's actually given us some really nice insights, right? A lot of people think that you need to have these long unbonds or these long bonding periods to really encourage and keep people bonding their liquidity. And we've seen even through these massive downturns, like when Atom dropped 20% in a day a few weeks ago, we actually saw the amount of Atom that was provided in liquidity actually go up during that same time period. And the TVL obviously shifts because prices change, but we really wanted to focus on providing both an extremely ideal trading experience and liquidity providing experience. Since we've launched ShadeSwap, we've seen the launch of all the major liquid staking derivatives for Atom on ShadeSwap with both pairs to Atom. So, we onboarded Persistence and Quicksilver and Stride. And so all of those liquid staking derivatives for Atom all have their pairs to Atom. And then they also all have pairs to Silk as well. We've seen the onboarding of all of the different major decentralized stablecoins in the Cosmos. So we're talking about CMST, IST, USK. I might be blanking on another one here. But yeah, and since then we've seen some really incredible growth. I mean, we can talk about all the different value props and how much they might all contribute to the activity that we've seen thus far. But in our eyes, like, this is all about creating this all-encompassing positive experience. Like, we can't necessarily attract people with just one value prop. And I'm not sure if it was Carter that said this. It might have been someone else on the team that said this, but it was really eloquent saying, it's basically like, the reason we don't want to just highlight the privacy aspect of our applications is because oftentimes it's not enough for just one value proposition to get someone to change their processes. We've definitely seen this with wallets. We've seen this with different DeFi applications, but you need to be able to provide more value to your user base, and privacy is a huge value proposition, but we need to be able to do more than that. And so we really wanted to focus on, one, creating this super cohesive user experience and interface so that regardless of what you're trying to do, we want to provide this maximum flexibility, this maximum accessibility to all these different opportunities and unlocking utility within Shade Protocol's ecosystem. Shade Swap being one of them. Shade Lend is another one. Silk is a whole another beast. We can get into that if you want. Hopefully, I answered your question.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, that was great. Yeah, so this is really up to you. Would you rather go into maybe some of the major announcements that you want to make, or do you want to talk more about that value prop and maybe how it ties into one of those announcements, which is the meta engine?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just very quickly highlight Silk and Shade Lend for anyone who aren't as familiar with that. Shade Lend is effectively the primary issuer and stability mechanism for Silk, which is the native private by default stablecoin built on Shade Protocol. So this allows users to collateralize their favorite liquid staking derivatives, ETH, Atom, regular Osmo, USDC, and USDT to borrow Silk. This also allows users the ability to leverage stake their liquid staking derivatives, unlock additional earning potential with their assets, preserve their purchasing power, et cetera, et cetera. And there are some really, really interesting value props with Shade Lend, specifically pointed at user bases outside of the Cosmos, particularly looking at the Ethereum ecosystem, and that is being able to access private loans and private liquidation points. This kind of, I definitely will be able to tie this back into the meta engine, but being able to provide this cohesive user experience and user interface where users are always just one click away from whatever application that they want to use. If someone wanted to, on Ethereum, wanted to take out a private loan, right? They could go to the Shade Bridge interface and bridge their ETH or USDC or USDT, right, Bitcoin, whatever, to Secret Network on the Shade Bridge interface and be one click away from being able to take out this private loan. And then they're, again, one click away from being able to swap that asset, which is Silk that they're borrowing, for another ETH asset that they want, and then immediately bridge that asset back out into ETH. And now users have a completely private loan that they've accessed, where their liquidation points can't be hunted. And so people might have heard me harping on, one of the best value propositions for privacy and DeFi is that we're able to help protect from value extraction, and being able to protect those liquidation points, protect from front running. Those are all, protection from value extraction that we see in general DeFi. And then just a quick point on Silk. For anyone who isn't aware of what Silk is an over-collateralized, privacy-preserving stablecoin built on Secret that is pegged to a basket of global currencies, commodities. As a reflexive currency, Silk is more adaptable and resistant to volatility and any changes in monetary policy than any stablecoin pegged to a single currency to date. And conceivably, Silk can include any type of asset or currency into the peg, which creates a degree of flexibility and reactivity we've never seen in this industry before. And so being able to kind of tie that in, well, I'll touch on the airdrop first, if you wouldn't mind. Are you cool if we segue into that, Patrick?
For sure, for sure.
Okay, cool.
Win airdrop.
Oh man, Carter joked about this. I think it was a month or so ago, but he was like, "Yeah, we might be getting up close there to having like the longest airdrop in crypto history." So either way, we're gonna be set in history here. But yeah, so the final unlock of the airdrop is going to be happening on June 27th, and that is going to coincide with the launch of staking. Just to give a brief history on the previous airdrops that we did, February of 22, we launched the first part of the airdrop. And this was dropped to Adam, Luna, secret stakers who were staking between November 7th and December 13th. It's a beautiful moment. Everyone got rickrolled, and it's kind of the kickstart of the movement that Shade has become. And later that year, in November of 22, we launched the second part of the airdrop that coincided with bonds, which allowed users to earn Shade by locking up their Shade over a specific time period. This was also the first launch of a bond product in the Cosmos ecosystem, so kind of double positive moment there. And then now we're looking about 7 months later, going to be unlocking the final 70% of the airdrop as we launch staking. And for anyone who didn't catch the dev roundtable, I believe it was the April dev roundtable for Shade, we kind of laid out why we wanted to have the final airdrop coincide with staking versus the launch of Lend or Swap. Lend and Swap launched, like I said earlier, in April, and effectively the process of trying to incorporate this into some of the more complex products was just making things a bit more complex than it really needed to be. So we wanted to just kind of attach that final airdrop to very simple interface and set of actions. And with the previous airdrops, we've seen like 35 to 40% claim rate. I could be off. someone on the team wants to correct me on this, or someone in the public wants to correct me on this, please do. So with 70% unlocked, we could see about 400,000 shade being claimed if we see similar claim rates. So it's going to be a really really engaging time for everyone in those Atom, Secret, Luna communities that are coming back. For all these people that do come back and actually claim their shade, they're going to be able to see a full set of these interconnected applications working harmoniously together. And like I kind of said when I originally described what shade is, they're all self-referential. They're all directing, like collecting and directing fee streams to one single governance token, and that is shade. And then this is kind of where we can get talking to meta engine. I'll stop here, Patrick, if you want me to go into any other details about the airdrop, or if you have any other questions before we dive down the meta engine rabbit hole, because it's a big one.
All right, so June 27th is the airdrop. So, yeah, I think I remember another point that Carter made about this being such a long, drawn-out airdrop. On a positive note, is that sometimes projects do airdrops, and for a long time, there's really not much you can do with the token. But in this case, people are going to come, they're going to claim their shade, and then there's going to be a whole suite of applications ready to use and live on mainnet. And that's pretty exciting. So, yeah, I hope we see a lot of people come back and claim their shade and just start making use of the Shade Protocol suite of dApps. That's going to be really cool. And the meta engine is part of
Yeah,
that.
and yeah, being able to come back to these all these different applications that are interconnected, interwoven, and seeing how they all work together, seeing the success within Cosmos DeFi that we've seen thus far. That is super important, but also, we want users as they come back to be able to utilize this shade, right? Not only it'd be great if price was just up and everyone claimed and they're happy just holding, but just like we've seen with the rise of liquid staking derivatives, just like we've seen the rise in adoption of other other really critical narratives in DeFi right now, such as sustainability, this real yield narrative. We think it's equally as important for users to be able to feel and see that revenue generation happening while they're holding this. And so that's, what staking is kind of going to be able to unlock for a lot of people. You'll be able to use your shade in, providing liquidity on ShadeSwap. You'll be able to stake your shade and participate in governance, participate in, the distribution of revenue being generated by all these different applications. And then also in the future, we're going to have shade staking derivative. So users will be able to lock up their shade and mint out a shade staking derivative, and being able to, also earn that staking yield, whether it be a combination of real yield and the kind of pre-ascribed staking emissions that were set in the original tokenomics to shade stakers, whether it be a combination of one, prioritization of like pure real yield, whatever the case may be, users will be able to finally tap into that as well. So it's a very multi-pronged approach, and it's kind of surreal to see us finally getting to that point. Very similar feeling as getting to the point where we launched ShadeSwap and Silk.
Amazing. Okay, well, we're almost at the halfway point, so I want to go ahead and ask the audience if there's any questions that they have for Shade Protocol. You can go ahead and start putting your hands up. And in the meantime, let's go ahead and go down that rabbit hole with the meta engine and talk a little bit more about how that works and how it brings value to Shade and how it works with all of the different applications in the Shade Protocol suite.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we think back to the original description I gave for Shade Protocol, I mentioned that Shade is this financial system of self-referential applications, all sharing value accrual, governance, and functionality under this single overarching token, right? And so when we talk about the meta engine, for anyone who hasn't read the blog post that Shade Protocol put out, if you haven't read it already, I highly recommend you read it. It's incredibly informative. You can just Google Shade Protocol Meta Engine, and it'll be the first thing that pops up.
I'll pin that in the space right now.
Appreciate that.
so that people can easily find it.
Um, but the meta engine really describes how this value is created and distributed to both public goods and stakers. And when we say public goods, we mean our own applications and the functionalities that allow users to have this really seamless user experience when they're using Shade applications. And so our goal is to make an entirely self-referential DeFi economy of applications where each dollar of activity kind of creates this ripple effect across the entire set of Shade applications. And all of that activity and revenue is captured and repurposed within the Shade meta engine. And so as a result, the applications for Shade become more powerful due to these shared incentives, this shared and cohesive user experience and interface, shared revenue, shared liquidity between all these participating apps. And so I want to highlight, a simple user story to help people understand the impact of kind of what I'm going to be describing here, right? And so this is a simple user story for anyone who is coming to Shade Protocol for the first time and they want to unlock additional utility for their assets. So let's say a user bridges in Atom into the Shade app using the Shade IBC bridge, right? The IBC bridge is one of our public goods that we built. It's not something we can really monetize, but it's something that is incredibly important to creating this cohesive story, user story. And so it's an incredibly important part. So a user bridges Atom into the Shade application. They then purchase Secret using Atom. And so a user is assessed a swap fee when they do that swapping. The user then takes that secret and mints out stake secret. So they are assessed a staking derivative fee. If they wanted to be able to, accrue staking rewards while they're using their secret in DeFi, they were going to want to mint out this staking derivative. Then users could lock up that staking derivative in Shade Lend in order to borrow Silk. So they have a borrow fee that they're assessed. The longer they hold that Silk, they're going to be assessed interest fees. A user can then take that Silk and trade it for whatever they want. Maybe they want to do some sort of leverage staking. So every time they trade that Silk for, let's say in the example of leverage staking as stake secret, every time they swap that Silk for stake secret, they're going to be assessed the swap fee, a borrow fee, interest fees. And then if a user gets liquidated, or then there are liquidation fees assessed. If there are arbitrage players that are selling liquidated assets or participating in long form or short form arbitrage for any of these staking derivatives, those are all swap fees assessed. So I really wanted to just highlight that to show the breadth of revenue streams just based on what we have out right now. And this is not to kind of downplay the impact of what we've built thus far, but it is meant to highlight, the various different trading fees and revenue streams that the protocol already has that exist, right? And so then this begs the question: how does this bring value back to Shade, right? Like, how does this impact me as a Shade holder? And so as these fees accrue through the various fee streams from applications within our suite, fee streams are converted into a variety of different, we'll call it like materializations of fee streams, just to keep it generalized, whether that be the buying back of Shade and redistribution, the acquisition of yield-bearing assets, buying back Silk, trying to cover operational gas costs. All of these things, all of these fee streams can be converted into these various different materializations in order to either provide utility for the public goods, whether that be something like the bridge interface or the fee grant, or it be to build protocol and liquidity so that the protocol has a greater claim on trading fees for swaps, or whether it goes all back to Shade stakers, So there, and I also just want to highlight, like, there's been a ton of great discussion surrounding this. I know the team has really been internalizing a lot of the feedback we've received from our communities, and it seems like the majority of individuals are leaning towards close to 100% direction of fee streams to stakers. And so we're talking about directing all fees from liquidations, swaps, borrowing, interest, liquid staking, derivative, minting, redemption, all going back to stakers. If this is the path that we as a community choose to kind of go down, and it's been a great discussion that's been going on, and I just want to highlight how excited it makes me as a contributor to see people within the community so passionate about achieving sustainability for the protocol and the token. And so to kind of circle back to the question, how does this bring value back to Shade? Regardless of the percentage, I'll just keep it arbitrary right now, just because things haven't been set in place yet, as far as I know. But regardless of the percentage, a majority of the fee streams that Shade is collecting are going to be distributed back to Shade holders. And the reason why we're kind of thinking this way is multi-pronged, right? One, stakers, once governance is live, stakers protect the distributed admin control over certain aspects of our smart contracts. And so it's going to be incredibly important for us to have stakers aligned both with governance and interacting with Shade staking. And generally, stakers have the longest term view on the protocol. If we decide to have any sort of lockup for Shade staking, which there almost certainly will be, considering the ties to Shade governance, we want to be able to present or protect against 51% attacks. And so, regardless of that on bonding period, stakers are naturally going to have to take a longer term view on the protocol's outlook. And so we want to be able to reward these people who have participated and supported the protocol and take this long term view on the protocol, and wanting to really focus on the utility long term. We want to be able to provide the majority of the fee streams that Shade Protocol is generating back to these token holders. So I'll stop here, Patrick, in case you have any questions or you want me to clarify anything.
So I guess to put it simply, you stake your Shade, and in return, you get more Shade, and that comes from fee streams.
Yep. Yeah. So the idea would be like if we directed 100% of revenue back to Shade stakers, one way this could be, the way this would potentially look would be all of the revenue streams, whether it be collected in the form of Shade, Silk, ST Atom, ETH, whatever your asset may be, those assets would be swapped for Shade on the market. So it would help provide buy pressure for Shade, bring the Shade price up, and then that Shade would be redistributed to stakers as real yield. Very similar to, it's pretty similar to kind of the Kujira model, where they have no inflation. All the yield that comes from the token is coming from real yield.
Got it. Yeah, that's awesome. Looks like we have someone coming on stage here.
Hi.
Hey, Lisa.
Hi, Patrick. Yeah, it was great. Red Bear, thank you so much for going through all of that. I'm Lisa Loud. I'm the new executive director of the Secret Foundation. And I really, I come from a background of DeFi, essentially. So this is right up my alley. I'm really interested in finding out some more about it. But the question that I had for you specifically is, I've really been looking at institutional adoption of DeFi because, according to PwC, 30 to 40% of asset managers are interested in coming into the DeFi space over the next few years. And so, to me, this is really relevant because how does an institution come into DeFi if somebody can copy their strategy or front run them? All of that. So having something that can be confidential and not put into the mempool and easily front run is super important. I'm just wondering how you plan to if you have a plan to bring this functionality to the institutional community, and like have you thought forward to that and how you're going to present it and get some attention and get some adoption from asset managers?
Yeah, thank you, Lisa, for coming up here and asking this question. Really great to have you here as a speaker and appreciate the question you posed. We definitely consider this, and I want to start my answer with just saying that part of the journey that Shade Protocol has been on since its inception has been laying the groundwork and building the blocks that will be required um, to access those different types of people, right? If this is coming from like my personal view, but like Shade, the applications and the value proposition that Shade puts forth is most easily recognized by larger players in this industry. And I mean that by saying, like, if you were to, let's say, only want to make a swap for 10 USD worth of an asset, right? If you go to a whole bunch of different dexes, they're all pretty much going to give you the same rate as long as there's some decent liquidity. So like you won't be able to recognize, let's say, the value, like the actual efficiency value of asymmetric concentrated liquidity for swapping derivatives or stable coins. You won't be able to realize that as much with the smaller amounts you're actually playing with. Where you really realize the impact of that efficiency is when you start trading much larger quantities of assets, when you start borrowing and leveraging larger amounts of assets. And so what we have done thus far is build the building blocks for, or put in place the building blocks to be able to facilitate this activity when it comes, right? We would hate to be able to get to a point where we have the attention or have the ability to attract these investors, and we don't have the efficiency that's going to be required for these actors to want to interact with the space. This kind of goes
Yes,
back to what I said, like privacy can't be that only value proposition, even though it is an incredible value proposition, very empowering, especially in this space, in this digital space. We have to have more than that in order to attract this bigger institutional and enterprise capital.
for
And so,
sure. Latency is one of the most important things. And that's, you make great points. I'm specifically also asking about providing liquidity because a lot of the institutional funds that I know that are coming into DeFi are providing liquidity so that they can collect the fees. So they're moving their liquidity from place to place and really making their money on the fees. So from that perspective, I'm not even just the swapping. Like you have a really great point that a larger amount, you'll see that arbitrage opportunity bigger. It's more impactful if you're using a larger amount across different platforms. But I'm more specifically asking about providing liquidity and yield farming from, well, I mean, yield farming is an overloaded term, but let's just use it here to mean that you're creating liquidity farming. Let's call it that. You place liquidity and you farm the fees. I'm just more specifically asking about how you have created the platform so that those asset managers may not be as interested in low latency and high performance trading, but is the platform ready for them?
great question. I appreciate the clarification. So an important part I want to highlight, and I kind of briefly highlighted this earlier, is that the liquidity provider experience on ShadeSwap was built to try and provide users maximum flexibility, right? And maximum, I guess, purchasing power preservation isn't the right way to say it, but like we wanted to reduce impermanent loss. We wanted to reduce the lockup periods. There's no unbonding periods. I would say one of the biggest draws for institutional or enterprise players when they're wanting to provide liquidity is they're going to be very focused on, and this is something that retail providers might not focus on. I know I sure didn't focus on it when I first started providing liquidity almost 2 years ago. But being able to provide liquidity for a particular asset. Like, let's say an institutional holder is just holding a bunch of ETH, right? But they're just holding a bunch of Bitcoin, and they're not interested in acquiring any Cosmos assets like Atom or Secret or anything like that. They just want to be able to earn with their assets, reduce impermanent loss as much as possible. And so what they're able to do is, if they were able to provide that asset, whether it be Bitcoin, USDC, USDT, ETH, whatever they want, they can do that pairing it against Silk. And during that market downturn, if they're concerned with the market going down, and they're concerned about the value of this asset being lowered, when you're providing liquidity against Silk, let's use ETH in this example, right? If someone's holding a whole bunch of ETH and they want to pair it against Silk, and ETH goes down, the way that pool imbalances, because they're not pairing it against another volatile asset, they're not experiencing I guess, the full impermanent loss that they could. As long as Silk maintains its peg, they're only experiencing impermanent loss on that one asset. And the way that would actually be materialized for that user is they get a little bit less Silk, but they get that equivalent amount of ETH back, right? And so for them, if they're still very long ETH, they're very long Bitcoin, long whatever it is that they want, this is somewhat of a beneficial scenario. Now, if you're just concerned about your bottom dollar, then you will see somewhat of a reduction in the amount of value that you're LPing, like the value of those LP tokens. However, you're not experiencing loss on both of those tokens. And so if you have a long-term horizon on your liquidity providing experience, or just holding ETH in general, then or any of these other assets that I mentioned, then this is a beneficial scenario for you. If you end up with more ETH, then
Yeah.
great.
I can totally see that. Most of the people that I speak to in institutional DeFi are not long on ETH. They are very conservative, and an impermanent loss is I know you're not using that term, but like, just to encapsulate that concept, if you get more ETH and you don't believe in ETH because you're a traditional asset manager, and you're like, my LPs just care about my dollar value, then you still have like the Silk versus ETH. I know for a crypto person it makes sense, but for a non-crypto person, they're going to be looking at, where did all my stablecoin go? All I have is
For
this
sure, for sure.
token now. So yeah,
Yeah.
just a counter
So
perspective.
yeah, 100%. And so, we, this is one of the another benefit that Shade Swap provides, is we have, really good access to decentralized stablecoin liquidity. So, and both centralized stablecoin liquidity. So whether it be USDC that they're also holding, like maybe they're incredibly stable heavy and they would just want to deploy that and earn on swap fees, earn, a little bit of LP rewards, then, stablecoin pairings, you're going to experience basically no impermanence loss as long as both of those stablecoins maintain their peg, and then you get to earn from swap fees.
Yeah,
And so
awesome.
if that is the case, then your main value propositions is that these institutional holders can hold this LP token, can hold this LP position without letting any of their counterparties or any of their potential competition know how they're making their money. If this is part of some sort of proprietary strategy that they want to implement, this isn't public for any of their competitors. They can LP their stable coins and earn from swap fees on it. Really, anytime they're holding their stable coins within Secret Network, any interactions they have are going to be private by default. So, there's a lot of value propositions there, regardless of how you want to deploy capital into DeFi.
Awesome. Yeah, sorry to put you like really on the spot there, but
Oh no, it's
great,
fine.
great
I
answer.
enjoy it.
Go ahead and ask once more if there's any other questions that people have. Go ahead and put your hand up, and we'll bring you on stage. In the meantime, is there anything else you wanted to cover that we didn't get to cover yet?
Sure, I'll kind of look forward a little bit into the future. Obviously, we've been looking forward to staking in the final airdrop for quite some time now, so it may seem a little bit too quick to already be looking past this, but we're very forward thinking, and so while we already covered the airdrop staking that are going to be going live next week, we're still steadfastly working on providing support and continued production of other tooling sets, compatibility, integrations. One of those we're still working really, really hard on is providing mobile support for the Shade applications, and this is in a really, really good spot right now. Some of you might have seen some of the teasers that we've put out before with some of the different mobile views. From what I've been told, we're conservatively say 75% of the way there. And so that's in a really, really good spot. We're also working on providing MetaMask compatibility for all the Shade applications. And I guess by extension, we're going to be looking to provide support for the vast majority of wallets in the crypto space that users might want to connect and use. Wallets are such a huge part of the self-custodial nature of this space, and it's a huge part of the user story. And I think a lot of the Cosmos ecosystem either doesn't realize the friction that's associated with swapping wallets or creating new wallets. I mean, or they just don't want to prioritize it. They're so stuck in trying to create their own new applications. But hell, I've been working in this space for a little over a year, and it still makes me nervous having to do anything with seed phrases or trusting new software. And so, we're incredibly excited to roll out that MetaMask compatibility.
Yeah, totally agree. I have a question about that. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I see that bridging is supported already from MetaMask, but you're planning to support natively, like providing liquidity, swapping. You can do all of that from MetaMask.
As far as I know, yes. I
Okay.
see Mo is in the audience here. So Mo, if you want to vehemently correct me if I'm wrong, feel free to request.
Yeah, I'd love to know what the functionality is going to be.
Yeah, but that, as far as I know, that is the end goal. We want to be able to provide all that general compatibility for MetaMask users to be able to use the Shade applications natively. And then, kind of on top of that, one of the next biggest things that I think everyone has kind of been looking forward to or knows is on the horizon is the rollout of governance, which is also in a really, really good spot right now. Like I mentioned before, stakers protect the distributed admin control over aspects of the Shade protocol smart contracts. So we're very focused on making the rollout of this functionality as smooth as possible. So those are probably the main three updates post airdrop and staking that people can look forward to.
Awesome. Thanks, man. All right. We do have one other question, it looks like. I'm not even going to try to pronounce this name, but go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, man. Actually, it's pretty easy to read if you just solve the riddle, but I'll let you think about that one. No, so my question was about the reliance on USDC. That has been working my head a little bit. USDC and USDT. Like, is there any plan to actually wind down the mechanism to mint Silk against USDC and USDT at some point, or are you guys just planning to leave it there like it is?
So, there's, I guess, let me preface my statement with the fact that we can't really force people to pay back their loans and to basically deposit and borrow in other vaults. What we can do is we can just close minting. Similarly, like if you go on the borrow page on app.shadeprotocol.io/borrow, you'll see there are two sets of vaults, one that are closed for minting, one that are open for minting. We could do something similar where we just close those vaults and we don't open new vaults for those centralized stablecoins. I'm not sure if you're familiar with what Carter has dubbed Operation Touch and Go, but effectively this outlines like this multi-year plan to eventually move to 100% decentralized collateral. And we recognize the some of the risk that is associated with having more of that centralized collateral early on. But at the same time, we also recognize the boost to adoption of Silk that allowing these centralized stables as collateral provides. And so it's kind of why it's called Operation Touch and Go. Like, there are pros and cons to having different percentages of your collateral backing be these centralized stables. And so early on, we're basically saying, like, we are okay with having a little bit more of that exposure to centralized stables in the name of increasing adoption, but very focused on moving away from these long term.
And don't get me wrong, I have USDC in both of these older vaults and the newer one. And I mean, the reality is that USDC just is easier to work around with, but I'm still looking at different options. Like, I love the USK model too, the Silk model, LUSD model. Like, I just want to like go around all that. I've been stuck in all of them, the FUDs event, with BUSD, with USDC, UST, all like, all of them I had. So I'm just trying to like, look at that perfect, I guess, recipe without any centralized. And just I love actually the USK model, but I also like the idea of Silk and how it is done. So that's probably both of my preferred stable coins in terms of ideology. But
Yeah, it's just if we look at some of the examples that you've given, and the context is slightly different based on what ecosystem they were launched in, but having something that is purely decentralized, having a purely decentralized backing from the get-go, is great for sort of that security and resilience factor. Although you definitely do give up some of that initial adoption, like being able to capture some of that initial excitement and a wave of adoption. I'm personally, and I think everyone on the Shade team would also back this sentiment. Like, we're very focused on providing and expanding access to decentralized collateral so that users can collateralize their favorite tokens to be able to borrow Silk. And if you're a long-term Shade follower, you've been kind of following what's been going on since the launch of Shade Swap and Shade Lend. I'm sure you've heard us say, like, before we launch these new collateral vaults, we need to make sure we have adequate liquidity on Shade Swap so that if users' positions are liquidated, that those the people who are facilitating that liquidation, that are depositing Silk into the earn pool, they can then sell those assets for Silk and then redeposit into the earn pool. So, like, there is somewhat of a process, but I'm right there with you. Like, we want to see further empowerment of decentralized assets being able to be utilized in Shade Lend.
just remind me, just as a clarification, in the minting vaults, I would say, is USDC and USDT fixed, like price fixed to $1, or is it actually following the market price with a I forgot the name there,
Like the price
an
oracle?
oracle? Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
the USDC, USDT are not hard coded. They have price oracles for. We have price oracles for all the assets accepted as collateral.
So if USDC were to depeg again, for example, so chances are some of those vault would get liquidated, right?
Yeah, depending on how, depending on
Yeah,
how,
how high is
yeah, people
yeah.
who like to ride the danger line. If you're at max LTV, yeah, you have a decent likelihood of getting liquidated. But I guess it depends on how far USDC depegs, right?
Yeah, my thought behind this is that probably must be pretty high considering people just rely on the fact that it's not going to price shouldn't be moving, right? But I could just imagine that the ratio must be pretty high in that vault.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we look at the vaults that we've raised the max caps, like max allowances for Silcon, USDC, and ST Atom are the ones that we've raised these max caps the most. Let's see. I'm on the page right now. There's about 860,000 silk borrowed against ST Atom in the new vaults, and about 1.1 million silk borrowed against USDC. So yeah, USDC has the highest vault utilization rate out of any of the vaults right now.
So because when just from the last experience, I remember USK and it was LUSD. They barely depegged out of because of that USDC, and they were pretty back on track shortly. That was in hours following. So, but I mean, I guess if it gets liquidated, usually price should follow. So,
Yep, and users have the one of the things, or one of the reasons we're so focused on providing this mobile support is that so users have the ability to top up their collateral, pay back what they've borrowed in times of heightened volatility. Like if someone is seeing that USDC is depegging, they can take not uncorrelated assets, buy cheap USDC, repay their loan. They can take Silk, repay their debt, with the USDC, they could top up their collateral, or they could take Silk and repay their debt. Yeah, hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just quickly, while we're, I just thought of that. Is there any, probably there is, but is there an actual short or any time frame in terms of IBC, or because there's still that old shade going around. I think I seen in the Kuji, and I think they still have some on Osmosis. I'm not sure if they still have it. But there was that old version 1 shade on these on this network. But is there any plan to use sooner rather than later IBC shade and silk?
So to answer the first part of your question, getting new shade pairs outside of shade swap depends on a few different externalities. For example, something on, if we wanted to get shade listed on Fin or Bow on Kujira, those require governance props. So we just have to make a governance prop to basically say, hey, we want to open up this new pair. Again, I don't think they can take down the old pair, so there would need to be some good education on, like, these are different assets. Like, this old shade is not compatible necessarily with this new shade unless it's migrated. And then it's got that, similar fungibility. But, anyone using old, you can't use old shade on shade swap. The only thing that you can really use old shade for within Shade Protocol's ecosystem is to unlock your airdrop bond. It requires a small amount of old shade. So I'm not as familiar with Osmosis Frontier. I'm pretty sure that's permissionless listing. So like that would just require the creation of a new pool, someone bridging over a small amount of new shade with another asset. I assume most things get paired to Osmo on Osmosis Frontier. So that would likely be the case there. But as far as replacing liquidity for shade, for that old shade on these other things, that is definitely important, but we're also equally, if not more focused on increasing shade liquidity on shade swap, right? I think that will forever be the best place and the primary place for individuals to buy shade. But I 100% see what you're saying. Like, you want to make it easy for people to acquire shade where they're already at.
Well, I guess like in the spirit of Cosmos, right? It's just if somebody wants to do a pool over there, I mean, it's their business, right? If let them do, but
100%.
It's just, and also like I've been seeing like CoinGecko is still tracking the old price of shade there. I guess because of Fin there, but there is no feed for the new one. So I still always see the old price going around because the liquidity is very thin.
I know this is unfortunately a waiting game with CoinGecko right now. Just waiting on them to integrate the shade swap APIs to provide better pricing. I know it's not exactly comparable, but in the meantime, for anyone looking to check out the shade price on mobile, we do have if anyone is familiar with this Silk Road Telegram group that we've got, one of our community members built a price bot that pulls price feeds directly from ShadeSwap, so anyone can see token prices for any token on ShadeSwap using this bot within our Telegram group. So obviously it's not as good as CoinGecko, especially for new prospective users, but anyone that is already in the ecosystem and wants to keep an eye on the Shade, Silk, whatever price on ShadeSwap, they can do so via this bot.
Well, have a look. Thanks for answering all my questions.
Yeah, not a problem. Thank you for asking them.
Thanks for those questions. Up, up, down, down, left, right, BA select start. Yeah, I did have to think about it a little bit.
Yeah, that was the second part, but you missed the name part. It's just it's very easy to read, if you just so, 2 syllables.
All right, we'll go ahead and close out the space because we are 7 minutes over. Thanks for coming to Secret Spaces, everybody. Thanks to the Shade Protocol team, especially. Just to wrap things up, what should people be doing to keep up with what's going on with Shade Protocol?
Great question. In order to follow or in order to stay up to date with all our most recent developments and everything that's going on in the community, best places for announcements are follow us on Twitter, to get active in our community, join our Discord and Telegram communities. And if you want to partake in some of the deepest discussions that are going on, definitely suggest you check out the Shade Protocol forums as well. For anyone looking for educational content, if you want to see, what the interactions on ShadeSwap actually look like, what the user flow looks like before you actually interact with it, go follow us on YouTube. And then just, if you're curious, just reach out to us in DMs. We're always happy to chat with folks interested in privacy and sustainable DeFi. So anyone who wants to chat, whether it be on a Twitter space, just through DMs, catching up offline, just feel free to send us a DM. And I guess I'll close this out with Carter said this beautifully in the past, and I just want to share this statement he's made because it really hits home for me personally. There are two things that are extremely hard to fork: community and integrations. And I mention that solely because we wouldn't be where we're at here today if it weren't for the support of our community and the passion that our builders exhibit. So I just want to thank everyone that's been on this journey thus far with us. I'm incredibly excited to be along on this journey with you all. The future is going to be incredibly bright, so I hope you all stick around and participate in the growth that we're going to see in the future.
Amazing. Thanks, man. All right. Well, have a good week, everybody. We will be back here next Tuesday at 4 p.m. UTC for another episode of Secret Spaces. Have a good one.